Let me introduce myself. My name is Dave Stokes. I'm a community manager for MySQL, which means Oracle pays me to go out to evangelize about MySQL. I'm also your ombudsman, so if something worries you, concerns you, you have gripes, concerns, issues, give them to me and I'll give them to my management. They don't always respond publicly, but believe me, every criticism I give them, they really sweat over. By the way, at the end of this evening, we're going to have a drawing. If you have nothing going on the last weekend in September and are able to go out to San Francisco, we have 2 passes to MySQL Connect, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. Big show. We're having a lot of our big customers out there. Matter of fact, customers are doing almost 55% of the presentations. This is PayPal, Pinterest, a power utility from the Netherlands, I believe. Facebook, all talking about how they do things with MySQL. And if you were here this weekend and heard my Saturday talk, this is going to be an expanded version on that. I don't see any familiar faces here, so don't worry about that too much. Okay. By the way, by all rights, I should probably be a Bostonian. My parents are both proud graduates of Bunker Hill High. My mother's father was a fireman who was badly injured in the molasses flood of 1919. My dad's dad was a locomotive engineer for the Boston and Maine Railroad. My parents got my sister married out of Somerville High, retired to the West Coast, and my mom woke up one day feeling terribly nauseous, and that's how I ended up not being a Bostonian. This is a quick little update on. That freaks me out seeing the boss do that. On the latest stuff with MySQL. This is for the lawyers in the audience. I'm talking about some new features that aren't quite gelled yet. So I might be saying something's blue, and you're thinking a cerulean blue. I'm talking periwinkle, and it actually ends up being Robin's egg blue. So this is a warning that some of the stuff I'm talking about, don't hold me to the letter of the explanation because it's probably in flux. So why did Oracle buy a whole bunch of stuff to get MySQL? MySQL is a great little database for Oracle. A lot of their big apps, when you stick $1 million price tag for an 11G license out there, are a little hard to sell to the smaller companies. Pull that out, throw in a free or a $5,000 MySQL license, something that's a little more attractive. So we fit a lot of holes they don't have. We'll never be the next 11G or the next 12i, but we fill a lot of niches they want filled. So what is Oracle doing with MySQL? Well, they're dumping lots of money in on developers and support folks. The idea is Oracle wants MySQL to be a better MySQL. If you love MySQL now, we want you to love it even better. If you're kind of lukewarm, we're trying to seduce you. Okay, the regular database. Oracle doesn't talk about a product until after it has a stock keeping unit and a price already in a catalog, ready to ship. Doesn't work well with something like MySQL. So what we have are the development milestone releases. So what are they? Well, they're the improvements on 5.5. How many folks here are running 5.0? Okay. You folks might want to move away. Okay. 5.1? 5.5? Okay. 5.0 to 5.1 is a little bit of a nasty upgrade. Read the docs really well. The good news is 5.1 to 5.5 is almost anticlimactic, and you get 20% to 30% performance gains right off the top. Now 5.6, I don't know what our overall big gains are going to be, but we've been going through and adding features to it. In the past, if you had to suffer with subqueries, we've actually changed the optimizer to go out and do good things for subqueries. We've added more fields to the performance schema, so we can actually tell you what's going on at a granular level. NODB. 8 years ago, Oracle bought this company called Innovace Oy, the folks who make the InnoDB storage engine. And this is the first time you heard, oh my God, Oracle's trying to kill MySQL. Well, now that the Innobase guys and the server guys are reporting the same management, they're going through the code with a fine-tooth comb, and they're finding all sorts of nasty things that they pull out, and things run a lot faster. Replication. Yeah, we know replication kind of has problems, so we're trying to make that better. And then, for those of you with pointy-haired bosses, you've probably heard not only or NoSQL out your ears, so you're sick and tired of it. We now have some features for that. Okay, so what have we done with InnoDB? A whole lot. The probably most toy-like feature is full-text search. There's a lot of folks who are used to doing full-text search with MySQL, and if they want to do it with InnoDB, they want to Sphinx or Solar or something like that. We're not quite at the Solar or Sphinx level, but there's now full-text search with InnoDB. And the one thing they added is you give the 2 words you want to find in a number, and it will find those words within that number. So if you're looking for fire truck and purple within 10 words, it will find all those occurrences. Better recovery. One of the things we're doing is that it will also keep some stats, so on reboot, you don't have to wait for InnoDB to warm up to get everything flying great.
Just make an observation, right? We were using MySQL for a long time. It was very convenient to be able to go, just pull the file, back it up, transfer it to another system, and this, I haven't been able to figure out anything, but it looks like it's much more complicated.
Yeah. Anytime you add transactions to it, it becomes an overhead nightmare.
Yeah.
David here used to be one of our instructors, and he can tell you the steps on backing up MySQL versus backing up InnoDB. It's like having a 3-year-old and a 16-year-old who wants some spending money. It's the implications on the transactions just get terribly messy.
Oh, which one is the 3-year-old?
So, replication. We finally have multi-threaded slaves. That will make life a lot easier. We've been going through the row-based replication. And if you've been playing between statement and row-based is a lot slicker now. The big thing on the second grouping there, global transaction identifiers. Every time something gets sent out to the slave, it's going to have a number stamped to it. And the slave will be able to realize whether it's processed it or not. So if you're running multi-masters to a single slave, or the dreaded master ring, we're not quite there yet, but the master will be able to recognize, oh, I sent this out, I don't have to apply this to my data. So we're getting that worked out. Failover with Workbench, which is a free tool. There are some scripts you can get off Launchpad where you say, okay, box A is going to be my master, B, C, and D are going to be slaves. Use those scripts to take a copy of the stuff from master A, put it out on the other boxes, and say, okay, A is the master, but if one of them fails, grab one of the other 3 boxes, and it'll automatically fail over for you. And it also helps you fail back. And also, we've been working on making things much more crash-safe in the slave arena. We've got checksums. You can see there. This slide deck was prepared by our engineers in marketing. If you see any of my presentation I do myself, I very, very rarely put any sort of bar graph or line graph, because none of you folks are going to buy a product based on a line graph. But if you are, let me know. I have some bridges and other real estate I can sell you that look rather impressive on PowerPoint. But our engineers are trying to show what happens when you start doing multi-threaded slave performance. And this is the best example I have. Now please note they're running Oracle Linux. The guys who are behind Oracle Linux like breaking the device drivers for disk drives. Well, besides being a little sadistic, why would they want to do that? Well, they're trying to get data off disks and into memory and reverse that process as fast as possible. Well, that makes Oracle OG run much faster. Well, when you do something with a lighter weight database like MySQL, it makes it positively scream. So if you're playing with your Linux boxes and you're noticing you're having some I/O contention, try Unbreakable Linux. It also comes with a product called K-Splice. So what you do splices to your kernel while it's running without crashing the box. First time I saw it, I thought it was black magic. I'm like, no, show me again. You can put in patches, take them out, doesn't matter. So back to global transaction identifiers. We're trying to make it so replication is impervious to just about anything you throw at it. And we can't make it idiot-proof, but we're trying to get it there. So for those of you who've been suffering with it since the early days, we're making much more bulletproof, and your slaves will be much more reliable. So these are some of the scripts you can get up on Launchpad that work with Workbench. Like I said earlier, you basically tell which box is the master and which ones are the slaves, and which box you prefer to be the master in case the slave fails, or once the software pick it, and you get a very nice little HA package there. These are some.
Can I get a question? The MySQL level have a vision in doing the same kind of idea SQL Server is doing. Their application have a different angles, say. You can replicate it to local database, whatever. And they can take the database away offline to the update, and they can sync it back. So I never see there's not direction of MySQL. Is there any visioning or they're trying to do that better?
Our approach is a little more vanilla. In the past, doing alter table on an NODB table could really be nasty and could lock up tables for a long time. So rather than do the swap out like that, we're working on making it better. So if you do an alter table, it does the changes faster and better. But the switching back and all that, you can kind of fudge it with the tools that we have now, but that's not our roadmap for that product. Optimizer. How many of you go to conferences or shows or something where you run into Monty? Those of you who don't know who Monty is, don't worry about it. He's one of the founders of MySQL. Our engineers are working very hard and probably bugging the 11G engineers. How do you do things better? And in the past, subqueries from MySQL really stuck. We basically didn't optimize it, didn't have the smarts. Well, now we can. And you'll see with 5.6 that they really scream. So if you're rewriting subqueries in the joins, give it a try with 5.6, you may not need to.
So you mean 5.5 don't have that?
5.5 doesn't have that. 5.6 will have it. We've also been working on the cases where you really don't need a file sort to optimize things. And with the condition push down, match key access, and multi-view range reads, we're doing a lot of things down the storage engine, which means it works a lot faster. How many of you are familiar with Explain? Okay. It used to be, for those of you who don't know, Explain is used to tune queries. It tells you what the optimizer thinks it wants to do to your query. And due to some weird programming, it only worked with select statements. So what did people do? Well, they changed the select to, changed their updates, deletes, or inserts to a select and ran the query. And we'll wait for the optimizer to do that. Well, we finally got smart and changed the code, so we'll accept inserts, updates, and deletes. And you can also now get JSON formatted updates so you can see what's going on. And for those of you who are really looking for the last ounce of performance, you can now get JSON format traces of the optimizer output with a query trace. So you can see exactly why it made that change, or that plan to execute your query.
Sorry, what is JSON?
It's a,
Okay.
it's this year's XML, I should say.
Okay.
This is a graph that shows what happens if we push things down to the storage engine rather than have the server run it for big joins. So if you have a lot of nasty joins, you'll find those will run a lot faster. Performance schema. How many of you have peeked into your system's performance schema and actually found something useful? Okay. We're putting a lot more in there and getting a lot better printed out. And now that our engineers are able to play with these things, they're looking for better optimizations. But for you, if you're trying to figure out why things are going slow, you'll have more access to what's going on with the query at the low levels. So, the URL on this is wrong. I didn't correct it after the other day, I'm sorry. The DMRs are labs.mysql.com. We had a new one that came in on Thursday, and we'll go over that in just a little bit. Okay. How many of you run Memcache? Okay, you're going to love this. With Memcache, you can go straight to the InnoDB storage engine, bypassing the optimizer and the parser, and get to the data. A little bit more of a speed increase there. The other good thing for those of you who aren't running Memcache is that you have the same data available through Memcache as you have under SQL, which means you don't have to have another set of disks for your whatever NoSQL option you're going to go through and your SQL option. It's all the same there. It's very fast, very slick, and if you're a long-time Memcache user, you're going to love it. So they've got rid of, as you see here, they got rid of a couple locks and improved some flushing, and it's got nice, pretty graphs. So back to the NoSQL. This also works with the cluster product, by the way. We'll touch on that in a bit. So if you have a key value pair application that you need, try it out with InnoDB. It's simple to implement, very well documented, and in some cases, if you're doing lots of Memcache, it will save you some hits to the database. Another feature that's going to make life better is whenever you had a transaction, the system would wait and wait and wait until it was your turn to go ahead and record that transaction out on disk. It's a nice clean model, doesn't work well in real life. So we've added a group commit. So if there's a bunch of transactions that are ready to be written to disk, they get all done at once.
That's done on backend, or you have the instrument to do that.
The system just knows there's a whole bunch out there and does them at once. And here's an example of the performance increase by having the group commit. And yet another pretty graph. I shouldn't be surprised with these graphs. So we've upped the optimizer, got replication going better, smoothed out InnoDB, made it scale better, made it a little more usable, we've got a lot better performance, and all the other little features for the performance schema and the utilities. But what have we been doing for cluster? Any cluster shops here? Oh, what? Good. What do you use it for?
We're in development mode at this point, but
Okay. I was talking to a gentleman this weekend who's using it for his LDAP server because the implementation his boss put in 2 years ago doesn't work. Okay, for those of you who don't know, you are cluster users even if you don't know it. If you have a cell phone, all the major telcos are tracking these cell towers with a MySQL cluster. Why? It's amazingly fast. It can be set up so there's no single point of failure. It's up 7/24/365. And it works really good in the telecom area where you have really fast reads and writes, but not long sets of data. Well, that's great if you're a telecom, but if you're not, and you want that, what else do you do? Oh, by the way, the Navy runs carrier flight operations on MySQL cluster. They evaluated everything else, and they decided that with a node in the bow and a node aft, that they can keep flight operations even if they lose half a ship. So if you think your users are tough, imagine if they landed on your roof at 200 miles an hour, could strafe you, and had access to bombs. You'd probably be a little better on your environment. So, what are we doing to make it a more general purpose? Well, we've rebased it instead of 5.1 on MySQL 5.5. We've added support for running in the cloud. And probably the most attractive thing for most people is it knows how to auto-shard your data. So you throw data out there, add a new node, or 5 or 10 new nodes, it knows how to balance things out there and keeps track of it. It's active-active replication. And if you have a cluster here and a cluster in New York, they can keep sync all by themselves. Very little overhead on that. Your big trouble is probably going to be the delay on your data comp. And with the new cluster manager software, adding a node or setting up a cluster comes down to just a few commands. Previously, it was kind of like juggling. You had to keep 3 things up in the air at the same time to get it to run. So, with 7.3, well, this is 7.2 here, able to get 1 billion reads per minute. Same engineer, with a slightly different box, going through an API, kind of like the Memcache one that bypasses some of the optimizer stuff, was able to get 1.2 billion updates a minute. Plus, this is all ACID. And with the new version, which was just, I rolled out a new version also on Thursday, you get foreign keys. Okay, end of September. We're going to be giving away 2 passes later tonight. Somehow we'll have to figure out a way. Big conference, San Francisco. It's the weekend before Oracle Open World. Anyone here suffered through Oracle Open World before? David's giggling because if you haven't been,
that long door.
yeah. Oracle Open World is they closed down a good section of downtown San Francisco just because there's so many people walking across the streets. How many? 45,000. San Francisco is a big town, but it doesn't have 45,000 hotel rooms, which means in about a 70-mile area around San Francisco, hotel rooms become a non-existent entity if you need one and don't already have one. Waitresses will literally kiss up to any boss they need to make sure they work extra shifts because these folks need to be fed. Cab drivers come out of retirement that haven't driven in years and probably shouldn't have. Limos that you barely wonder how they passed the California smog test are out there because there's an extra 45,000 people. Well, the weekend before that, we're having a MySQL only show. It's going to be 2 days. We're going to have lots of sessions, hands-on labs, breakout sessions. We're going to have our best engineers there to show you what's going on and to be there for you to ask them what's going on. And the majority of the presentations are going to be from companies like Pinterest or PayPal, talking about how they do things with MySQL. Our EVP is going to be there speaking. He's a very taciturn man, doesn't really like to get out to the big audiences, but he loves tech crews. So when he said we were having this, we're going to have all the techies there, he immediately volunteered to speak. The man on the bottom is our head engineer. If you can stump him, you will probably win a prize. I think the final count is 72 sessions, plus BOF sessions at night. Plus, a lot of us will have credit cards to take you drinking afterwards. So it should be quite the experience. Hands-on lab. If you want to play with cluster, you want to play setting up replication and failover with the workbench utilities. If you want to see some of the new security features, like the plug-in authentication, or you just want to learn cluster, we're going to have all that there. Plus, we're going to have exhibit halls, demo pods, all the vendors will be there. And we're going to have a big, big, big reception. By the way, if you need a copy of the slide deck, slideshare.net/Dave Stokes. That's my email address. And before I get too lost, I'm going to talk about what happened last week. One of the joys when you're working for a company that has a product and you're traveling is for some reason they tend to give all the announcements about the really cool stuff while you're in the air. And as soon as you turn on your cell phone, someone's saying, "What about this? How could they do this?" Well, that's my life. For those of you who are fairly new to MySQL or haven't dug through the manual in a while, Appendix D is where we list all the changes. And whenever we have an announcement of a new product, do yourself a favor with an adult beverage at night or a nice strong bit of caffeine in the morning when you get to work. Read through these changes. I was going to highlight a couple that came out here. The most notable is that security improvements. MySQL now provides a method for storing authentication credentials securely in an option file. No more of your boss fat-fingering the password to the database and writing on the post-it note that he sticks on the wall next to his daughter's softball picture, and everyone knows where it is so they can get to your data when you're not around. If you feel strongly about it, please let us know. Let's see if we can find the next one.
And you just have the physical security of keeping people out of that room.
Yep. Here we go. The year 2 data type is now deprecated.
How did they do that?
Well, it's our deal with the folks who have the Mayan calendar syndicate. Since it won't matter because there's no 2013, we figured everyone was good. No, being serious, we looked around and we asked people, do you actually use year 2? And they said, not really. So if we got rid of it, you wouldn't object? So we're putting this out here to see if anyone really uses it. What's going to happen is there's going to be some package, Drupal, Joomla, WordPress, or something like that, that depends heavily on year 2, and we'll find out about the hard way. But for right now, if you know any code you have that depends on year 2, please let us know. Most of these, if you go through and read them, they're edge cases that the majority of you will never, ever, ever touch. But for those of you who are being pushed and shoved into IP version 6, we now have a default new client address. So instead of the lovely 0000, we're now getting one that's just a colon. Oh no, it's the asterisk. I'm sorry. And then there's always the fun part, the bugs fixed. Oracle's position on bugs is a little frustrating for those of us who cut our teeth in the open source world. That's where you give away everything. And that works real great when everyone's open and there's only a few dozen folks running your product. What happens with something like MySQL and somebody discovers a flaw and we publish the details on it, and you find out that some hosting company like a GoDaddy or a Rackspace, their database guy's out of town for 2 weeks, and therefore they can't get the patch out there, so all their 15,000 paying customers or more are fighting script kiddies. So Oracle does not give out a lot of details on how the bugs really work. If you're talented and want to go through the source code, you can figure them out. If you're not talented and don't want to go through the source code, it's probably something you're not worried about too much. But we are cutting down on the big bugs. I think right now, before 5.6 goes GA, by the way, it will go GA the day it's ready. Don't have a specific date yet. I think right now there's less than 50 major bugs keeping it from going GA, and the engineers are being prodded to get those closed down. We'll probably go GA sometime between now and next spring. Usually Oracle makes big announcements around Oracle Open World, so you might see some news around that. But that's my part of the presentation. What I want to do is come to you folks and say, okay, what can we do to make your life better with MySQL? Can you hit the light switches back there so you can get some? Oh, by the way, stickers, come grab a couple feet of them, festoon your gear. I have flyers for MySQL and business cards. So, what are you guys happy with? What are you unhappy with? You got a sly smile. What are you unhappy with? Another satisfied customer. He says on camera. Yes, sir.
The new global transaction feature for replication.
Yeah.
There's a restriction, right? You can't do create table as select.
Yeah.
That makes me very unhappy.
Well, I'll pass that on to them. I've heard the reasonings behind why you can't do that. It kind of confuses replication when you do that because it actually, I believe the stats get breaking down wrongly. But I'll pass it on to that you want to do the create table with select. See, that's the type of feedback I take back to the engineers and go, but they'll end up doing it. No one's asking about 5.7 and kind of slipped about 5.7.
Well, so with the with 5.6, is it a feature freeze now, or are there potentially more features that are going to be in 5.6 before GA? Or
I think the stuff that happened on the latest DMR are the latest and greatest features.
so what?
They might slip one subtle thing in there, but there's going to be no other, oh my god, they actually got that into there. One of the engineers, if you're reading planet.mysql.com, someone caught some bad code that got in on the new password thing. And also noted when we looked in the web log that one of our engineers said, oh yeah, I'll fix that in 5.7. So the next release will be 5.7, and I'm not leaking anything there.
What are recovery of NDB states from the big pros? Still not very good.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the design of NODB. It wants to keep that space around because it knows one of these days it's going to want to use it. Throwing on some sort of garbage collector, I know they've looked at it from time to time, but I don't know if they're going to do anything about it. Yes, ma'am.
Will there ever be a renamed database?
There was a renamed database, and it didn't work too
Will it
well.
be there ever again? It's in the manual.
It's in the 5.1 manual, not in the 5.5 manual, or the 5.0 manual, not in the 5.6.
Users.
I know that's on their list, but I'm not quite sure where it is. Whatever it cost them to take it out is probably freakier behind the screen than I actually think. But by the way, most of the packages out there that you use for user admin, you want to check this out if you're using PHP MyAdmin or any other thing. When you set up an account by default, gives your people drop table privilege. Those of you who aren't shuttering, replace the word table with child or computer. Drop child privilege, drop computer privilege. Go through and change that if you can. God, you're quiet. I'm sure you told me you guys were tough.
I'm curious about one thing, and I haven't looked, so I don't know if it's there or not. Are global indexes for partition tables?
global indexes.
Right now, the indexes are by partition, which means that we can't do things like foreign keys, we can't have full text indexing in a partition table, lots of other stuff. But global indexing would solve them.
I'll have to go look that up. I know we now have sub-partitions, but I haven't gone
Well,
through
we had
that.
that.
I'll have to go look that up. I'm not quite sure why we wouldn't, but global indexes on partitions. Okay.
Oh, you had mentioned Monty. I'm just curious. Like, it sounds like some of the things that are in 5.6 have been done with Percona patches and with MariaDB. Is this like is this accepting those packages, or is this Oracle's own development on a similar type of features? Or?
To be honest, there's some work that Monty's being paid to do, like the GIS global positioning stuff that they're being paid to do, that I honestly hope that we get to port in when he's finished with it. There's other things like group commit, where Facebook had their version, Percona had kind of a version of Facebook's version, Monty had his version, and we had our version. According to Monty, everything but his is crap. Our engineers looked at his and said, there's some cases we don't want to run this type of stuff. Sometimes it's multiple people reinventing the wheel. They look at what we do, and I'm sure our engineers probably peek at what they do. So things like group commit, our engineers did look at what he did and kind of vetoed it and had their own application. For other things Monty's doing, like the variable columns, one of our engineers did that for his doctoral dissertation 15 years ago and was looking at it and going, this looks familiar, why? It depends. It's one of those things where, once the first car had a cup holder, and everyone said, gee, why do you need a cup holder in your car? And then 10 years later, everyone has multiple cup holders in their car. I'm sure if they come up with a good winning feature, we'll probably suck it in. Monty has a bigger problem where if we come up with something new, well, I wrote that back in the 4 days and it never got implemented with version 6, I love Monty, but I would not want his business model for any cache. Yes, sir.
Regarding index, is any new vision or planning to do for, I know some of the you can index on certain columns and you have other columns included in the index page. So that you do the index, you can look at the index cell, you can answer the query, and those other columns don't have to be in index itself, but it's just in leaf pages. So that speeds up the loss of queries, so you don't have to much overhead. Is there any planning of MySQL?
They're doing a lot of work on the NODB secondary indexes, but for most MySQL folks who do something like that, they'll end up using a composite index, which works fairly well.
Well, it seems that some other columns just want to put in a leaf page, but don't want to be put in composite keys. They're going to increase their key too much. But when you answer the queries, you can just look at the key, go to the leaf page, grab that, and answer your queries. You don't have to go to the other type of primary keys.
Yeah,
That's huge.
Yeah, the bash key access to the multi-read row kind of takes care of some of that, but not all of that. Where you got there? You two are very quiet. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Can you explain the Memcache API a little bit more in terms of why would I use it? Is it a separate table structure that you would have where you're just using MySQL as a key value store?
Memcache evolved because going out to the database for session data, for example, was expensive. So they came up with a caching idea where you have this big cache, you have the value for 15. It's already in the cache, I don't have to. When it's not in the cache, I go down to the database, pull it up, put it in the cache. The folks who wrote that were some of the early MySQL folks. Brian was one of the folks who wrote that, was he? Anyway, it speeded up for a lot of simple websites getting data out of the database for things like session data. So if you're looking at a lot of little cookies or session data, it helps there. Now, Our approach is rather nice in that you can get to the same information either through Memcache or you can get through SQL. So you don't have to go out and have a set of disks with the redundant data out there to go out and keep track of things. Does that kind of answer your question?
I'm just confused about, so I use Memcache already, so why would I be interested in the Memcache API for MySQL?
Because with it you can get better, faster digs into the database to get the information because it goes right into the storage engine. It bypasses the optimizer and the parser and just grabs the data out of the storage engine.
Isn't Memcache already in memory, so wouldn't that be faster than going to the disk?
Well, you have the database memory and the Memcache memory. So now you're digging right into the memory here without having to go through the server. Give it a try. It might be faster for you.
Is that related to or is it the same as the socket handler? Because I remember there are some benchmark in socket handler outperform Memcache.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if that's related or.
Yoshinori Motsunobu wrote Socket Handler, and he now works for Facebook. And we based a lot of that interface off Socket Handler. So, similar ideas, slightly different finish, but yeah. Yes, sir.
You were saying there about the authentication as being important into this external file. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I now see myself being paranoid of this file getting out and I have no idea who's accessing my server. Do I have to do anything extra now, or?
To be honest, I haven't played with the latest DMR to figure out how these things work. What happened is one of the things Oracle did was they came in, looked at MySQL and said, this is great, a lot of customers run it, but it doesn't work with audit vault, doesn't work with the database firewall, doesn't work with a lot of the enterprise stuff. So we've been working to get it to do that. And then some security person watching the traffic over net says, gee, these MySQL folks are typing MySQL minus U root minus P. Oh my God, they're actually passing passwords on clear text, or they're actually passing it over SSL with a very poor encryption. So I'm sure this is an idea to put the information in some sort of .ssh file or directory so that the authentication knows how to go out and grab the encrypted data and send it back. But I haven't played with it enough to be able to give you a really good answer. But hopefully it's better security, and hopefully it's not enough of a pain in the butt to make us want to bypass it. How many folks here run SE Linux on their Linux boxes all the time? Okay. How many of the rest of you just turn it off the first chance you get? Yeah. So, any other questions?
So for pre-persistent, I know this 5.5, they're added caching for pre-persistent, but it's not everything. What about 5.6?
They've been working on that. The guys who wrote the PHP MySQL next generation driver have been doing a lot of work, including things for prepared statements. They also have it set up so that with a little bit of setup, it will know which of the slaves in your replication group is the most current and go out and read from that one. It'll also do failover, and it'll also do some updating of slave. Well, they've done a lot of work on it, so we put it that way. Yes, sir.
So,
Or ma'am. Sorry.
it's okay. You said that that there's a lot more monitoring added in this version. Would it ever replace app-side monitoring for queries that run against the database? I don't know if the question makes sense. Let me know.
Yeah, it does. Part of it is we're trying to make MySQL Enterprise Monitor more ID to buy this product to entice you to buy it, or give you more granularity of what's going on. I'm sure all the other tools out there like Cacti, Nagios and all that will take advantage of it. But as we improve the speed of things, we're getting better granularity of what's going on. So we're adding more and more peaks into the system with these various performance tables to see what's going on. In some cases, we're not quite sure what's going on, but it's the idea is we'll want to give you the tools so you can monitor what's going on with your stuff better. Does that answer your question?
So would it be more like buffer, like where memory's going to, where CPUs are being wasted in, that kind of
Yeah.
bogging down the, okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
so eventually we'll have some sort of heuristics. We'll come through and say, gee, if you set your buffer size from 4K to 8K, it will handle 85% of your data better.
Gotcha, so it'll actually give you solutions versus just saying you have an issue, fix it.
Yeah. By the way, the enterprise software, if you want to try it, it's free for 30 days. There's no time bomb in there, so if you end up going 45 days, it's not going to blow up on you. Try out Enterprise Monitor. It's a wonderful tool. The new Enterprise Backup tool now does backups in parallel and incrementals. A really slick tool. Once again, free for 90 days. And you can always tell your boss, for the cost of a couple seats of Microsoft Office, you could have a system that will allow you to have a vacation. What do I mean there? Well, if something goes wrong, you're a trained lackey or a trained monkey, depending on where you work, could hit one button and it will package up whatever the problem is with your complete environment and ship it off to MySQL support. So they won't be calling back every 20 minutes. Yeah, I need your Etsy host file. And then 20 minutes later, yeah, you know that CNF file? Can I get another copy of that? Bundles it all up.